Good evening, everyone. Welcome to NTD Tonight. I'm David Zhang. Here are today's top stories. The Supreme Court weighs in on a bankruptcy settlement from a pharmaceutical company. More details on the case and ruling. The presidential debate between Trump and Biden is underway. We'll take a look at how voters feel about the two candidates. Fires continue to burn in multiple states on the West Coast. NTD's David Lam will bring us an update on the blazes. First up, the U.S. Supreme Court rejected a bankruptcy settlement from a pharmaceutical company. The settlement would have protected its owners from getting sued over their contribution to the opioid epidemic. The U.S. Supreme Court blocked the Purdue Pharma's bankruptcy settlement. The settlement would have shielded the Purdue Pharma's wealthy Sackler family owners from lawsuits over their role in the opioid epidemic. The company faced thousands of lawsuits alleging that OxyContin caused more than 500,000 U.S. overdose deaths over 2 decades. The Supreme Court reversed their lower court ruling that gave the Sacklers immunity in exchange for paying up to $6 billion to settle thousands of lawsuits. The lawsuits accused the company of misleading marketing of OxyContin, a powerful pain medication introduced in 1996. Purdue filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in 2019 to address its debts, but not the Sackler family. At issue in the case was whether U.S. bankruptcy law lets Purdue's restructuring include legal protection for the members of the Sackler family who have not filed for personal bankruptcy. Another major ruling from the Supreme Court. The High Court today blocked an Environmental Protection Agency regulation. It was aimed at reducing ozone emissions that may worsen air pollution in neighboring states. The court handed the victory to 3 Republican-led states and the steel and fossil fuel industries that had challenged the rule. The 5-4 decision granted the requests by Ohio, Indiana, and West Virginia to halt enforcement of the EPA's Good Neighbor Plan restricting ozone pollution from upwind states. This ruling also grants a halt to restrictions on U.S. Steel Corp, pipeline operator Kinder Morgan, and industry groups while they contest the rule's legality in a lower court. According to the agency, the rule would result in cleaner air for millions of people and thus saving thousands of lives. Opponents have said the rule would impose unreasonable costs and destabilize power grids. Former GOP Congressman Adam Kinzinger has crossed the party lines to endorse President Biden. Kinzinger made the announcement at the Georgia state capitol. He emphasized the need to put country over party and defend democracy. He announced his support yesterday ahead of tonight's first presidential debate. He said he would do whatever is necessary to ensure the president defeats Trump in November. Kinzinger was one of the Republicans on the committee investigating the January 6th Capitol breach. He did not seek re-election in 2022 after voting to impeach the former president. Biden welcomed Kinzinger's endorsement. A replica wax statue of Abraham Lincoln couldn't handle the heat in Washington, D.C. this week. Sweltering temperatures caused the statue to partially melt and the head to fall off. Nearly 100-degree temperatures have slowly melted the 6-foot wax replica of the Lincoln Memorial. Cultural D.C. sponsored the exhibit. The executive director said the heat-related mishap has brought positive attention to the project they hadn't anticipated.
There's a lot of commentary and there's a lot of discussion, and so we've been really excited that Lincoln has at this stage in the installation that we're kind of seeing another round of conversations and attention being brought to sites like Camp Barker.
Maiselman added that the head would likely not be reinstalled this summer to prevent another fall and additional damage. The wax creation is an actual candle with wicks and part of a series of wax monument statues. For months, voters have been all over the map when it comes to which candidate they support the most. Well, let's take a look at what's on voters' minds going to the debate.
Ray Flores owns a handful of restaurants in Battleground, Arizona, and is unimpressed with both men who will share the debate stage.
At this juncture, they both had 4 years, and I'm just 8 years more frustrated than I was before. I wish we had a candidate that had more of a middle of life and middle of the road perspective, and I'm very uncomfortable right now with either choice.
We hear that a lot. Our All Over the Map project is at 60 voters and counting across 10 states. Yes, President Biden has his share of true believers.
Biden. I think he's done a great job.
So does Donald Trump.
I liked what happened in our economy for 4 years when Donald Trump was president. I liked the America First mindset.
But many voters dislike or have doubts about both, which makes this debate a critical campaign crossroads.
I just don't feel comfortable with Biden's age, and I don't feel comfortable with Trump's mouth.
For the incumbent, the cost of living is a giant challenge. Rising rents came up a lot in Milwaukee and in Las Vegas, and in other places Biden must dominate, like Atlanta.
Everything here in Georgia is so expensive. I can only afford so much, with whatever job I find.
Even strong Biden supporters complain of supermarket sticker shock.
It's just me and my wife, and it's $200 every time I go to the grocery store.
The president's age is already part of the campaign debate.
No matter how many Taylor Swift references you make, you'll never understand us.
A bigger Biden problem with younger voters is anger at his handling of the Hamas-Israel conflict.
I don't think nobody wants to vote for Biden. If Biden wants to get certain votes, he needs to change course.
Trump, though, also has a long list of weaknesses that could be debate flashpoints. Joan London just left the Republican Party and registered as an independent.
I had more of a positive vision, just a different emphasis, and what I'm seeing in the National Party just didn't reflect my values the way it had.
Matt Vrahodes is a Georgia Christian conservative pondering a third-party vote because of doubts about Trump's character.
Honestly, I wish that there was another candidate that would have come through the primaries instead of it being just, Donald Trump.
Yes, many minds are already made up. But for those with doubts about both Biden and Trump, this is a giant test.
Oregon, California, New Mexico, all battling fires. We'll round up the latest on these blazes and with a weekend heat update. Here's NTD's David Lamb with the report.
Plumes of smoke filled the sky in Oregon recently. Officials urged evacuations of hundreds of homes in the area where the 3,600-acre Darlene 3 fire burned in Lapine. The fire commander said there were a lot of unburned fuels.
Today, folks are going in and further securing those areas. There may be additional cleanup, and so smoke will be in the area.
The Deschutes County Sheriff's Office says evac alerts were sent to over 1,000 homes and businesses. As of Thursday, Central Oregon Fire Info says the wildfire is 30% contained. U.S. data shows dozens of fires on a federal level as of Thursday. Zooming into fire-prone California, several fires are burning actively, with the Post Fire being the largest at over 15,000 acres in Southern California. Luckily, CAL FIRE says it was approaching 100% containment and passed it on to the U.S. Forest Service. In New Mexico, where the village of Ruidoso evacuated this month due to 2 fast-moving fires, combined, the 25,000-acre fires have 900 personnel working on it. They're nearly 70% contained. It started on June 17th in the southern area of the state. The cause is under investigation. Agencies are warning residents to look out for scams or fraudulent contractors during the recovery phase of a wildfire.
With fire season underway, here's our weekend weather update. As forecasted by the National Weather Service, summer heat is still going to be continuing into the weekend. Friday, we see the South, particularly Texas, getting over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Saturday and Sunday, much of the U.S. will be feeling over 80 degrees. And to stay cool, be sure to carry around a hat, stay hydrated, and find shade. David Lamb, NTD News. Back to you in the studio.
Homeland Security says illegal border crossings are dropping quickly. They're at the lowest point since President Biden took office. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pastar has the immigration update.
Homeland Security says since President Biden took executive immigration action, the number of illegal border crossings has gone down by over 40%. Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas commented on this drop on Wednesday, crediting Biden for the low numbers.
The president's actions are working because of their tough response to illegal crossings and because they built on our sustained effort to exercise our full authorities.
According to the new numbers, average daily arrests are now below 2,400, but that's still above the 1,500 mark needed to continue asylum processing. Under Biden's executive action, asylum claims will not be processed if daily arrests are too high. Some exceptions are fear of torture and persecution in the migrant's home country. Mayorkas gave Wednesday's remarks in Tucson, Arizona. He says a bipartisan immigration bill, which failed to advance in the Senate earlier this year, would have added much-needed personnel to the border.
We are continuing to call on Congress to provide the resources we need to support our men and women on the front lines of our border.
Meanwhile, in Florida, a group of more than 100 migrants from Haiti arrived in a sailboat on Wednesday morning. The boat arrived close to the Florida Keys. Authorities say most of the 118 immigrants are male, but the group also includes women and children. And NBC reports that Homeland Security identified over 400 immigrants who came to the U.S. using a smuggling group linked to ISIS. More than 150 of them have been arrested, but the location of over 50 others is unknown. Lastly, Border Patrol agents are calling on migrants to reconsider making the journey to the U.S. because of extreme heat and the rough terrain.
The loss of life is not worth making this trek because all of these smuggling organizations are lying to the migrants who are crossing because to them, they're just a commodity.
The agent suggested that the reality migrants encounter on the journey can be very different from what they expected. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
We'll take a short break now, everybody, but here's a look at what we have for you when we come back. Another person was fatally stabbed after exiting a metro bus in South Los Angeles. Paris Hilton testifies to U.S. Congress about her childhood abuse at the youth treatment facility. And the Supreme Court allows the government to continue collaborating with social media companies to monitor unwanted posts. NTD's Arlene Richards has the report. Those stories and more coming up on NTD Tonight. Welcome back to NTD Tonight. I'm your host, David Zhang. Amid recent metro violence, one person was fatally stabbed in a Los Angeles metro bus attack. NTD's Christina Corona has more details on the story.
LAPD officers responded to the metro station at Slauson Avenue and the 110 freeway on Wednesday at 2 p.m. Officers discovered the victim and assailant had exited the bus together and engaged in an altercation. The assailant then pulled out a blade, stabbed the victim multiple times, and fled the scene. The unnamed victim was pronounced dead at a local hospital. The attacker, believed to be a white or Hispanic man around 30 years old, is still at large. Metro said in a statement, "Violence in the communities we serve spilling over onto our public transit systems continues to be an issue in Greater Los Angeles. Metro extends its condolences to the family and friends of the victim." The Metro Board will hear proposals to create an in-house police force on Thursday. Christina Corona, NTD News.
New developments from Highland Park, Illinois. Robert Crymel III, the man accused of the deadly July 4th parade shooting, backs out of a plea deal. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on the surprising turn of events.
Prosecutors thought they had a deal. The accused would plead guilty to 7 murder counts and 48 counts of aggravated battery, facing life in prison. But when the judge asked the suspect Tuesday if he accepted the plea, he went silent. After a recess, he returned and declined the deal in a surprise move, prompting the judge to set a tentative trial date for February 25, 2025. Outside the courtroom, emotions ran high. Leah Sundheim, daughter of shooting victim Jacqueline Sundheim, expressed her frustration.
And all I wanted was to be able to fully grieve my mom without the looming trial, knowing that he was going to spend the rest of his life in jail.
Karina Menendez, daughter of shooting victim Eduardo Uvaldo, says the process is very painful.
It's hard, and just to come in here and see the person that took my dad it's not something that you want to do. You know, you don't take it lightly.
The alleged killer, who previously pleaded not guilty, faces charges from the horrific 2022 parade attack that left 7 dead and 48 injured. Police say the suspect disguised himself as a woman and covered up his tattoos before opening fire from a rooftop. He then blended into the fleeing crowd before his capture after a car chase. Victims' families and their attorneys are now preparing for what they describe as Cremo's reign of terror continuing into the courtroom. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Advocate, activist, and entrepreneur Paris Hilton returned to Washington, D.C. to call for the government to overhaul a child welfare system. NTD's Christina Corona has more on the story.
Paris Hilton testified Wednesday before Congress, speaking to the Ways and Means Committee about the abuse she suffered as a teen at a youth treatment center.
When I was 16 years old, I was ripped from my bed in the middle of the night and transported across state lines to the first of 4 youth residential treatment facilities. These programs promised healing, growth, and support, but instead did not allow me to speak, move freely, or even look out a window for 2 years.
Hilton says she was only sent there because she got bad grades at school.
I was force-fed medications and sexually abused by the staff. I was violently restrained and dragged down hallways, stripped naked, and thrown into solitary confinement. My parents were completely deceived, lied to, and manipulated by this for-profit industry about the inhumane treatment I was experiencing.
Hilton first shared her boarding school experience in the 2020 documentary, This is Paris, followed by her 2023 release, Paris, the Memoir. Today, she advocates for more oversight and regulation of the troubled teen industry. Hilton claims that the treatment of children in foster care is unregulated. She states that the $23 billion a year industry views the vulnerable population as dollar signs and operates without meaningful oversight.
It costs approximately $800 to $1,000 per day to place a foster youth in a facility, significantly more expensive than serving them in their own communities. Why can't we as a society see that these kids are hurting? They need love and kindness, not beatings and restraints.
In 2021, Hilton's testimony about her experience at Utah's Provo Canyon School contributed to the passing of a bill that enforces stricter oversight of youth treatment centers in the state. Christina Corona, NTD News.
The Supreme Court says it was wrong for a lower court to block the Biden administration from communicating with social media platforms. Yesterday's decision undercuts the complaints of 2 Republican-led states. They argued First Amendment rights were violated when the federal government collaborated with the platforms to remove unwanted content. Our legal correspondent Arlene Richards has the details.
In a 6-3 decision on Wednesday, the Supreme Court preserved the federal government's ability to communicate with social media platforms, which means the government can continue to encourage platforms to take steps to block what they believe to be misinformation. Justice Amy Coney Barrett, writing the opinion for the court, said the plaintiffs, 2 Republican-led states and 5 individuals, didn't prove they had standing to seek an injunction against the government. She said they didn't prove they had any direct injury based on the government's involvement in advising platforms on what content to regulate, saying the plaintiffs should have sued the platforms themselves. Barrett wrote, "Here, the plaintiffs' theories of standing depend on the platform's actions, yet the plaintiffs do not seek to enjoin the platforms from restricting any posts or accounts." She also said the plaintiffs had not shown that they would face immediate significant harm due to the government's actions. The case stems from a period during the 2020 election and the COVID-19 pandemic when individuals posted their opinions on social media platforms. Platforms often removed posts they deemed to be false or misleading information. At the same time, several government officials communicated extensively with the platforms. Justice Samuel Alito, joined by Justices Clarence Thomas and Neil Gorsuch, wrote in a dissenting opinion that this is one of the most important free speech cases to reach this court in years. He said under the First Amendment, government officials may not coerce private entities to suppress speech, and that is what happened in this case, he wrote. He said the record contained vast evidence of communications between government actors and platforms that impacted the plaintiffs. The case is now pushed back to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals for further proceedings based on the majority decision. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
Crossing California's Golden Gate Bridge will cost 50 cents more beginning July 1st. For non-fast track drivers, the toll will increase to $10.25. Fast Track users would need to pay $9.25. The toll increases are part of a plan to schedule 50-cent toll raises each year over the next 5 years, a plan passed in March by the Golden Gate Bridge Highway and Transportation District. The agency noted a projected budget shortfall of $220 million. Stay tuned for China in Focus with Tiffany Meyer coming up next. One of America's most popular online shopping sites is in hot water. Arkansas is suing the China-owned Temu, accusing it of being spyware in disguise. More on China in Focus with Tiffany Meyer at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. And that's all we've got for you tonight. We'd like you to join us again on NTD Tonight every weekday at 9 p.m. I'm David Zhang. Have a wonderful evening.